Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Near Memo with David, Mike, and Greg. And today we are going to be talking about the OpenAI announcements on, Monday. And what day of the week is it? And Google I/O earlier this week, and sort of compare and contrast, and our reflections on I/O and OpenAI's competing, dueling announcements. So, Mike, why don't you lead us off with your reflections on OpenAI and ChatGPT 4.0?
My reflections on ChatGPT 4.0.
It sounds like you're mentioning ChatGPT 4.0. If you have any specific questions or need information about it, feel free to ask.
So the first thing that struck me, though, about the presentation from ChatGPT was just how cleverly they snuck it in just before I/O. How cleverly they did an upgrade, not a major upgrade to the number of tokens or the number, the size of their models, but an improvement to their speech in and out. And then it was very brief. I think you said 26 minutes. And then they released a bunch of sample videos. Now, the sample videos were a little deceptive because they showed some of the advanced functionality of their API, which isn't apparently available directly in the app, of being able to watch video and understand it. That's a feature that isn't clear to me exactly where it is. And so it isn't currently available in the off-the-shelf version. I think it's just in the API. So that was a little deceptive. It was still very impressive. The voice on it is very creative. The work it does is creative. The other day I left it on while I was taking a shower, listening to the radio, and I didn't realize I had left it on. And I asked it to summarize the radio program that I just listened to, and it gave me an excellent summary. This morning I dictated sort of straight up notes into it, and it outlined my notes in bullet form. I took this sort of rambling talk, outlined it in bullet form, rearranged it slightly to be slightly more logical, because I started with invites and it ended with invites, but produced a document that was near ready. It was very impressive. And, from my point of view, exciting sort of competition to Google on so many fronts. And interesting to me, I know David doesn't find this as much interest, but clearly there's been rumors of Apple negotiating with them and Gemini for some sort of inclusion in iOS 18. And if they gain access to, for example, Apple's knowledge graph, then it becomes a very powerful local search tool as well. The cutoff date, I think, for data in this one is October 23, but it does use Bing, for more current stuff. But it doesn't have a great local resource other than Bing. And I think it, integrated with Apple, it would have, not a billion users. I don't know what level of phone is going to need to be to use it, but it certainly would open up access to it. And so that raises all these questions about market dynamics. Would Apple be paying them? Would they be paying Apple? Would there be some sort of quid pro quo to gain access to all those customers? I would love to have been a fly on the wall of the conversation between Apple and Gemini, Google, Gemini, and ChatGPT. But it certainly, when I have it attached to my action button, so I can ask it a question, I can hit a button and it turns on. And give me the summary. Is the Apple TV show Franklin historically accurate?
Live demo fail.
The Apple TV show Franklin is generally accurate in its portrayal of Benjamin Franklin's diplomatic efforts during the American Revolution.
So the latency, is moderate. Oftentimes it's better than that. That was a little slow, obviously. Wasn't a fail, but it was one of those mic drop moments where it felt like it might be a fail. But it's still a very impressive product. And
so you're using it essentially as a replacement for Siri, it sounds like.
I am trying to, because I always ask, the problem is I don't always like an audio response, but I could do this, as an audio response. But
it is what
queries.
Sorry. It is what Siri, it sort of fulfills the promise of Siri in a certain way without being able to, control your phone.
Right.
But, just to the point about the number of tokens, I mean, Google made a big point at I/O, which we'll get to in a minute, about, their context window or whatever it's technically called, where you can continue to ask questions for a long, long time, and it'll remember what you're talking about, remembers context. There was an OpenAI upgrade. They called the function memory. So there was an upgrade that they didn't talk about in depth. I don't know how it compares. But one of the things that struck me about the lead up to the OpenAI announcement versus what they actually announced was there was this anticipation. We wrote about this too, that it was going to be a search engine and a direct kind of Google competitor. And what was that going to look like? And then Sam Altman said, "Oh, it's not a search engine; it's this other thing, which is the sort of upgraded voice assistant." But it is a Google competitor. This is the thing: is that if 70% of queries are informational or 75% of queries are informational, you're going to use this, if you're using it, if you're inclined to use it, to get information that you would have gone to Google for. I mean, that would have been a query that you would have asked Google, Mike, is this historically accurate? And then you've got a bunch of results, and you go into the results and try and determine which, what they say.
Or I got the Google AI SGE summary.
Right. But I mean, you would have gone to Google for that. Google would have been the only place that you could really go to get an answer to that question. And now you can go to ChatGPT. So in some, there's some Venn diagram where things that you might have used Google to answer, you can use ChatGPT to answer. And I think that's where Google's vulnerability resides, in that really large corpus of informational data and queries that that people go to Google to get answers to, that they're trying to address with the AI overviews.
I wouldn't doubt for 1 second, though, that the source of the rumors about ChatGPT creating a search engine likely originated with ChatGPT. I mean, I think they did a great job of creating press prior to Google I/O, and that cleverness probably extended to the rumor, is what I'm saying. I mean, I just think they did a great job. And then there's rumors about ChatGPT and Apple. I mean, who knows what of these are true or aren't true, but it still piques a lot of interest. And as you said, forces people to at least try it and explore it and see what it does and see how it integrates. And I've been experimenting with it as an alternative on my phone because I do a lot of voice. The problem for me is it's not integrated with HomePods and it's not integrated with my watch.
Well, maybe it will become,
It might become, right. I mean, I sit and watch TV. I'll often ask Siri on my HomePod, for a Wikipedia article summary of some fact, and it'll give it to me because it's referencing Wikipedia. It's both accurate and correct. But it TBD as to what it will do, how it'll be integrated.
So just to add a kind of an anecdotal example of my own, I was at a whiteboard the other day, and there was a bunch of kind of as the whiteboard full of scriggly, undecipherable handwriting, right? And I took a picture of the whiteboard. The idea was like, how do I get what's on that whiteboard into some coherent form that I can later consume? And I took a picture of it. I uploaded the picture to ChatGPT, and I asked for, essentially for it to make sense of what was on the board in no particular order. And it did that. It was able to translate. I mean, it didn't get it 100% correct. It couldn't read every piece of handwriting on there, but it was able to take an image of this whiteboard and turn it into a kind of outline or list of the items on it, which was really useful and kind of amazing to me,
Yeah, well, organizing the chaotic brain, right?
Well, just the labor. Yeah,
I was just going to say, Mike, on that point, I mean, they're definitely thrusting themselves right at the heart of Google's mission statement, right? With that exact example that Greg brought up, like organizing the world's information, no matter how poorly formatted and illegible it is, ChatGPT is still able to do that. And to Greg's point, the fact that it is doing not just that with an image in sort of a productivity mode, but can also be used for general search. And if it does integrate with the, on-device, if there is an on-device Apple integration, it will probably also be able to perform actions for us. I mean, it is really, I think, very much positioning itself as kind of this universal app for all of these sort of low-end agent type of interactions in one spot. And I think that the fact that it's starting from scratch, that it doesn't have a legacy of 82 billion products that it's developed over the last 20 years, the way Google has, that actually might be an advantage for ChatGPT in this specific instance.
Well, 81,999.9 million of which they've discontinued.
That's right. After acquiring them.
So do you guys know what the Winchester Mystery House is in San Jose?
No.
It's a house. It was a house built by, I believe, the widow. I could be mistaken about this.
Yes, I do.
The widow of the guy who invented the Winchester rifle, and it's this sort of labyrinth of rooms and weird construction. It's like this sort of accretion of room after room after room. It's sort of I was there years and years and years ago, so I don't remember, but it's a kind of a metaphor for Google's search results, right? It's like they've added and added and added. It's like a house that's been added onto without necessarily formulating a kind of coherent plan. And so we have all these blocks of content just, and you spoke, David, about the kind of cognitive load of dealing with some of these suggested queries and search scenarios. It just seemed like a burden. That's how looking at that page feels to me. It's just when I do a search and I see all those different blocks and modules and universal results, and it just feels very fatiguing to me. And
thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.